What you're about to read isn't just about a piece of broken fencing. It's about a league, a veteran, a blown lead, and a mirror that a lot of fans aren't ready to look into. Let's set the scene first. June 20th, 2026, Road Arena in Dallas, Texas. The Chicago Sky and the Dallas Wings just finished one of the more gut-wrenching finishes of the WNBA season. Final score, Dallas Wings 93, Chicago Sky 92. 1 point. One single point separating a gritty comeback win from what would have been a much-needed lifeline for a Chicago team drowning in the standings. And as the Sky made their way off the floor and into the tunnel, cameras caught something that immediately went viral. Natasha Cloud, 11-year WNBA veteran, one of the most outspoken and respected leaders this league has produced, took out her frustration on the arena fencing.
I have seen. Like, this is, you know, the Diana Taurasi breaking a door? This is the current day version of the Diana Taurasi smashing a door. Obviously, this is from someone called Cavell Harmon on Threads. But yeah, this is the 2026 equivalent of Taurasi smashing a door. Like, this is mental. This is absolutely...
Not in the locker room, not behind closed doors, right there in the tunnel. On camera, in somebody else's building, the clip spread fast, and the internet did what the internet always does, it split right down the middle. Some people were furious, some people were sympathetic, and a whole lot of people started using this moment to relitigate arguments they'd been having about this league for years. So let's actually break this down properly, because
this is clearly not right. It's clearly not right to wreck property, especially in an away gym. Especially in an away gym. That is not right, a right thing to do. Is it justified? I mean, you can absolutely make that argument that it was a justified crash out.
There are layers here that a 10-second clip simply cannot carry on its own. Before we even get to the meltdown in the tunnel, we need to talk about what happened on the court, because that's where this story actually lives. Chicago led Dallas by 14 points in the third quarter, 71-57. For context, a 14-point lead in the WNBA with a quarter to play is not a small cushion.
I'm being real. Like, Angel Reese is a shit talker like no other. There's no player that gets under people's skin like Angel Reese does, and that's part of her game. Like, she is the type of player that plays better when people are chirping at.
It's a comfortable margin. That's the kind of lead where coaches start thinking about resting starters and managing minutes. That's the kind of lead that, historically, you protect and bring home. Chicago did not protect it. Dallas chipped away, and Chicago helped them do it. Missed free throws, turnovers at the worst possible moments. The Sky essentially handed Dallas a road map back into the game, and Dallas followed every single direction.
Like, there is a double standard. And it's not necessarily, like, I understand that there's a double standard in terms of superstardom. Like, if a superstar does X or Y, it's very different from a basketball perspective. I get all that. And I understand that, and like, you know that is a thing. I think everybody knows that that's the thing always.
Direction on it. By the fourth quarter, a 14-point advantage had completely evaporated, and suddenly a game that looked like a Chicago win was down to the final seconds. Then came the possession that everyone is arguing about. 30 seconds left, Chicago up 5. Paige Bueckers received the ball beyond the arc, and Natasha Cloud fouled her outside the three-point line. Bueckers stepped to the line.
Like, we like to praise Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and all these players and call current players soft. Like, Michael Jordan, sportsmanship was horrendous. Like, Michael Jordan would crash out and punch teammates. Like, he was as big a shit talker as there was. Larry Bird is probably the biggest shit talker in history.
Hit the three-point attempt to make the foul count as a 4-point play, then calmly knocked down the free throw. 4 points. Just like that, a 5-point lead became 1. Sky fans immediately called it a robbery, controversial call, questionable timing. 5 straight whistles against Chicago in the final 35 seconds, a stretch so lopsided that even people watching neutrally raised an eyebrow. Here's the inconvenient part, though. Most analysts who reviewed the play agreed the foul was legitimate. Cloud made contact beyond the arc. The call was correct by rule. You can debate the timing, you can debate whether the officiating was balanced across the whole game, but that specific call, technically, it was right. And then on the very next possession, Cloud turned the ball over. Not the officials, not a question.
Correct. There is always a double standard when it comes to these two. And look, is this good from Natasha Cloud? No. Should she be fined for this? Absolutely. Like, If there's no fine for this, I'd be extremely concerned. But shit like this happens. It's basketball. Shit like this happens. We can be real here. Players will crash out. Players will be frustrated, especially given the fact that the game looked rigged.
Whistle. Cloud herself gave Dallas the opportunity they needed to seal it. That's how a 14-point lead becomes a 1-point loss, not a robbery, a collapse. To really understand why Cloud reacted the way she did, you have to zoom out beyond that single evening. This past offseason was a rough one for her. Despite being an 11-year veteran with real credentials and a long resume of leadership, Cloud didn't receive the free agency interest she was expecting. Her former team didn't even extend an offer. She ended up signing a 1-year deal with Chicago worth around $555,000.
Players will crash out. Players will be frustrated, especially given the fact that the game looked rigged. Like, the referees got 5 consecutive bad calls. It was 5 consecutive bad calls for Chicago in 35 seconds. With 35 seconds to go, Chicago Sky were up by 6 points. And they got 5 consecutive bad calls called against them. So yes, he will crash out. But it's like, do it in the locker room, not in public.
Essentially a prove-it contract. A bet on herself to produce and earn something bigger when the season ended. She's spoken publicly about how hard that period was. The uncertainty, the feeling of having to rediscover her footing and figure out what the next chapter of her career looked like. That's not an easy headspace for anyone, let alone a player who has spent over a decade building her identity around being a cornerstone presence. So when you factor in everything sitting on this season for her personally, the contract, the career crossroads, the pressure to perform, a loss like this one doesn't just sting. It lands differently. It's not just a game. It's a data point in an argument she's been having with herself since last offseason about where her career stands. That doesn't excuse what happened in the tunnel, but it explains why the pressure was simmering well before tip-off. Let's not dance around this part. Natasha Cloud was wrong. That's the first truth, and it doesn't need to be softened or dressed up in nuance. A franchise veteran, someone brought to Chicago specifically to provide leadership and stability for a young roster, cannot be the person tearing up equipment in a road arena after a blown lead. That's the opposite of what a leader is supposed to do. The young players on that Sky squad were watching. The coaching staff was watching. The whole league was watching. Leadership isn't just about what you do in the film room or what you say in the pregame speech. It's about how you carry yourself when everything goes wrong. It's about what example you set in the lowest moments, because those are the moments that actually define culture in a locker room. And in that tunnel, Cloud failed that standard. She should be fined. The league should address it directly, and if they don't, that silence becomes its own statement, one that sends a message to every other player about what's permissible when emotions run hot. There has to be accountability, and veterans especially should be held to it. That's one truth. Hold it. Now hold this one too, because it's equally real. The conversation around this incident, how it's being covered, who's amplifying it, what words are being attached to it, is not happening in a vacuum. We all know that the same footage with a different name attached would generate entirely different headlines. Think about how this league has handled emotional outbursts historically. There's a version of this story where a marquee star does the exact same thing in a tunnel, and it gets analyzed as a deeply human moment of raw competitive intensity.
Hey, look at this here. Boom. What, like, also, by the way, what exactly is the point? I get the kick. Oh, why did she just take the pole out and just... Oh, she launched it. That we didn't see.
There's a version where a more polarizing figure does it, and it becomes confirmation of every negative narrative that's been following her for years. And there's a version where a beloved veteran does it, and it quietly gets filed away under passion and competitive fire, and nobody asks any follow-up questions. Same clip. 3 different stories. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how sports media works, and anyone who covers this league or watches it closely knows it. We celebrate Michael Jordan and Larry Bird as the gold standard of competitive greatness, and both of those men were absolutely ruthless human beings when it came to the psychological warfare of basketball. Jordan punched teammates in practice. He trash-talked relentlessly. Bird would get inside your head before the opening tip and stay there all 48 minutes. We didn't call that a character issue. We called it the mentality of champions. And then we turn around and call today's players soft while simultaneously jumping on emotional moments as evidence of instability. The standard is not being applied consistently. That's just a fact. Take Angel Reese as another example. She's one of the best agitators in this sport, genuinely one of a kind in her ability to get under opponents' skin, to thrive in uncomfortable environments, to turn chirping and intensity into fuel. Historically, in basketball, that kind of player gets celebrated. That's what we call a killer instinct. That's what we say separates the mentally tough from the mentally weak. Reese rarely gets that framing. She gets something else entirely, and everyone watching closely knows exactly what that something else tends to look like. Natasha Cloud, Angel Reese, Sadhu Sabali. The double standard doesn't disappear just because we don't say it out loud. Sometimes the most revealing thing about a moment isn't the moment itself, it's the way different people choose to describe it. Let's pull back to the bigger picture here, because beyond the tunnel clip and the online debate, there's a real basketball concern sitting at the center of all of this. Chicago is 4-11. They've lost 5 straight. They are not a team that is trending in a positive direction, and the most frustrating part about this particular loss is that they had it. They had the win in their hands, a 14-point lead. They let it slip away through their own mistakes, missed free throws, turnovers, an unnecessary foul 30 feet from the basket, and then their veteran leader publicly fell apart in the tunnel afterward. The Sky brought Cloud in specifically because they needed steadiness. They have young talent that needs guidance, needs someone to model composure under pressure, needs a North Star when things get difficult. Instead, those young players watch their veteran come apart at the seams on national camera while the team is sitting at 4-11. A broken piece of fencing can be repaired, equipment gets replaced, but a locker room's trust in its leadership, its belief that the people at the top can hold things together when it matters most, that's a much harder thing to rebuild once it starts to fracture. That is what Sky fans should be losing sleep over, not the viral clip, the culture it reflects. Here's the thing about this whole conversation, and this is true of most big WNBA moments that generate this kind of heat online. Most people come to the discussion having already decided which truth they want to hold. They want Cloud to be either completely wrong or completely justified, because holding both requires something that Twitter and comment sections aren't really built for, sitting with complexity. But both things are true simultaneously. Cloud was wrong. What she did in that tunnel was indefensible as an action, regardless of the context, regardless of the officiating, regardless of how gut-wrenching the loss was. A veteran leader cannot be the one destroying property in someone else's building on camera. That's the standard, and she didn't meet it. And the way this story gets told, who covers it, what words they use, how much oxygen it gets compared to a similar incident from a different player, will tell you just as much about this league's media ecosystem as it does about Natasha Cloud. Both of those things deserve to be said. Both deserve to be held. Before you form your final opinion on this, here's the question worth sitting with. If that exact same meltdown happened, same tunnel, same fencing, same blown 14-point lead, but the player walking off the floor was the most marketable name in the league right now, on a massive contract with a media machine behind her, would your reaction be identical? Not your public reaction, your honest one. Because if the answer is yes, great. Hold the standard consistently. Apply it everywhere to everyone, regardless of jersey or contract or follower count. But if the answer is even slightly probably not, that's worth examining. Not because it makes you a bad person, but because it reveals how much of our reactions to these moments are actually about the players themselves versus the stories we've already decided to tell about them. That's what this moment is really about. The meltdown was a symptom. The collapse was the disease. And the way we talk about all of it tells you more about us than it does about Natasha Cloud. Drop your honest take in the comments. At WNBA Updates, we're not here for the easy take, we're here for the real one. If this video hit different, smash that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know, do you think Stephanie White needs to go? Let's talk about it.